guest today is Mr. Nick Shaw of Renaissance Periodization. I'm going to hop right into this. I'm not going to introduce you. I think you know yourself better than I do. So what is your background? How did you get involved with Renaissance Periodization? And what was actually your start in fitness?
Oh man, lots to unpack there. I have always been interested in working out since I was, I don't know, 13 years old or so. I had a brother who was 4 years older than me. We had one of those old, like sand weight sets in our basement that I think like maybe my uncle used to train with, and like when he was in high school, probably in like the 80s or something like that. And I saw my brother training for sports, and I was like, well, that seems pretty cool. And so I got into it, and I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. And I guess so that was like a starting point. What really clicked in my head was a couple years later, I was actually a runner in high school, believe it or not. Almost no one can believe that when I tell them now. But I was not a very good runner my freshman year on the cross country team. Like out of 9 people on the team, I was usually eighth or ninth. But our coach told us to run 100 miles over the summer. And so I did, of course. It was like, I'm just going to do what I'm told, right? Like that's in my head, I'm like, that's what everyone would do, right? That makes the most sense. And so it turns out the first day of my sophomore year, I showed up and I was up there running with the top people from the year before. And I was confused because I was like, did everyone else just get really slow? Or like, what the hell happened here? And, just from like asking people after that first practice, they're like, oh, well, like no one else ran 100 miles. Like one other person did. Of course, he was like the best guy. But I was like, oh, well, that's really interesting. And so for me, it was like this light bulb moment in my head that said, if I can just do the things that other people aren't willing to do, I've got a shot. And so when you see that in practice at that age, I don't know, I was 14, 15 or something at the time, it was so awesome because I realized I was like, well, I already kind of like doing this stuff. Most people aren't willing to do those things. I'm not very genetically gifted because I'm, you know, 5'8", 5'9", and slow white guy, right? I wasn't a super fast sprinter, and I wasn't great at long distance. I was like maybe decent at the mid distance stuff, like 400 and 800, because I actually was better at track than I was cross country. But that was like just this early learning period for me where it's like, okay, I love fitness. There's something to it. The harder I work, the better results I get. What can I do to really even enhance those results now? Fine tune things when it comes to training. Later got into a little bit more nutrition. So I always knew like I wanted to do something sports fitness related. And then I went to school at the University of Michigan here in the US. And that's where I met Dr. Mike. Now, he wasn't Dr. Mike at the time. He was this 5'6", 200 and I don't know, 10-pound, stocky guy in the student weight room squatting 4 plates a side, which, in the student weight room when you're in college, like that's completely unheard of. And so we instantly clicked. We got along really well. He got me, I think, competing in like the powerlifting club at Michigan. And it was like this competitive aspect of me had been reignited. And I just knew that I wanted to do it. He ended up coaching me through my first ever bodybuilding show way back in 2008, I think, 15 years ago. Damn, there we go, 15 years ago. And I just was hooked, man. It was right up my alley. And so for me, then like my junior and senior year in college, I knew that I went from like maybe sports related to I really wanted to do something fitness related. Got into like personal training after college, and the rest is really history.
Yeah, there's something you said there. I had Justin Harris on from Trupona Nutrition a couple weeks ago, and he had talked about right around the same age, I think 14. He went to the gym, came back, and was stronger. And there was this light bulb moment of he's like, oh, if I do this and I keep doing this, I could get better. And I think there is this light bulb moment for that moment for a lot of people, right? I think I'm probably similar to you. I'm barely taller than you are, but kind of, I would say maybe even less athletically gifted. And similarly, I played basketball in high school, and I would like could shoot the ball, and that was about it in grade 9. And that was the only reason I was on a team. And I just practiced like crazy for a whole summer. I had like these drills with like fold out chairs on my driveway, and then
Sweet.
started my last 3 years of high school. And it's the same thing. You're like, huh, if I just put tons and tons of work into this, it might not be great, but I'm better. And I think that like the pursuit of better is like the big thing.
Oh yeah. And yeah, it clicked real early for me, and I've always been really interested in it. And I just sort of think like, how can I apply it to every other area of my life? You know, personal finances, work. Obviously, you just keep doing the things. Like right now, I'm taking a ton of different courses, just trying to learn a bunch of different things, and it's just really, really cool. One quick little note: you mentioned basketball, so I was not very good at basketball in terms of actual basketball skills. I could dribble okay. I was short, so I had to be a guard. I could not shoot. I was a terrible shooter. But the thing that I was good at is because I was like fairly fast because I was a runner and all that stuff, and had pretty good endurance. If they would put me guarding the other team's best player, that is what I did, and I took it as a personal challenge, and I loved it. And like that was my thing. I could play defense. That was pretty much all I could do. But usually if you can play really good defense, there's usually a spot. Five guys on the court. There's usually a spot for like one guy like that. Offensive liability. But listen, he's out there. He can give effort, and that's really like I guess that was another like telltale sign of okay, not the most gifted, but there might be other areas that I can contribute to. And if you just work your ass off in those, you're probably going to be hopefully a net benefit.
It reminds me a lot. I think you actually posted something. I don't know if it was today or yesterday. Um, and it was something around the idea of fitness being this thing where you get this wish I could remember exactly the wording off the top of my head, but essentially like you can't hide in fitness. And you can see people who put the work in and do all the little things consistently, I wouldn't even say day in, day out, but year in, year out. You can have people that have money and they might have come into it with inheritance, or maybe they're just in debt and they have a nice car or something like people can kind of fake it in these other areas in life. But there's this even playing field, I think, in the fitness world where, genetics aside, um, there's this level of respect you have when somebody is a high level performer or has a great physique because the effort consistently that got put into that.
I was at Costco this morning, and I parked my car and I was getting ready to go in, and I saw this guy wearing like a powerlifting shirt. And I saw it from a little bit away, and I read it, and I was like, oh, okay, I know what that is. And then we kind of made eye contact, and it was just like this little like head nod we each gave each other. Because it's like, dude, if you run into someone out there like in just the general world that is not in a gym, and like they lift, there is a little bit of just like mutual respect. Like, oh, all
Mhm.
right, okay, yeah, that guy's probably cool. It is, man. There's just something about fitness. So the RP Instagram page did sort of post that clip, and it was like a TV clip from a show on NBC Sports. I happen to know the guys that run it, and so we did some filming with it. And I saw him post it, and I saw some comments because it was like, "There's no hacks, there's no shortcuts in fitness." And of course, like some of the comments, you can imagine what some of the comments were. Some guy was like, "Oh yeah, of course there are." So I replied, I was just like, "What are they?" Because here's the thing. All right, let's take that all the way. All right, so steroids. Well, most people would say, "Yeah, that's a shortcut." Okay, I hear you on that. I disagree in some sense, not completely. If you are competing against people and it is illegal in your sport, okay, yes, that's completely scumbag, dickhead move. F those people. That's all crazy. But usually with steroids, you recover faster. So usually, most of the time, you actually have to put in more work because you are able to do more. You are doing more, not less, more. It is not a shortcut. You don't just take steroids and just immediately become like the best in the world. It does not work like that. Like, no, absolutely not. It gives you the ability to do more things, but it takes that crazy work ethic on top of that to then produce those, be the best power lifter in the world or best bodybuilder or whatever it is. But I would argue it is absolutely not a shortcut. It is a shortcut if you're competing against people that do not take them. I will agree with that. There's always some nuance there. So I was really waiting for that guy to get back with that because I really wanted to dive into that one a little bit more.
I actually think on that note too, I would take it even a step further. If people are serious about their training and they're an enhanced athlete, like any pro bodybuilder, it's not even just that they're taking steroids and they're training harder or whatever. They also have to take potentially auxiliary medication, taking supplements to protect their organs. They're like, there's all of this extra effort that's put in support their health in order to take these enhancements in order to get better. Like, again, I agree. Like, if you are just cheating, within the parameters of your sport, then that sucks.
Yeah, that's
But
fucking stupid.
if
Sorry, is
you're
there
if
swear?
no, I agree. The worst one for me, I'll say, if you are a pro baseball, like if you're a AAA baseball player, and there's a difference between you get called up and you're going to make $1 million versus you're going to make whatever, like $40,000. There's still an ethical thing there, but I have a harder time blaming these guys. The worst thing for me is powerlifting and bodybuilding at the amateur level when people cheat in a tested federation, because you
That's
are competing for a plastic trophy in a sport that nobody cares about. It
all
is the
ego.
most, to me, I will say, I think it's the most cowardice thing. Um, if you're a pro athlete, like we'll call a spade, a lot of them are doing something. And that's a whole other conversation, I think. But especially, like your local powerlifting meet that's at the high school gym, and you're going to be the guy like that. I have a hard time with that.
Weird. Um, Real quick on what you mentioned, it's funny because I've had this conversation before with some folks I know in bodybuilding on the idea of steroids. It absolutely makes things harder. It does not make it easier because, like, when you are working with an enhanced athlete, there's so much more that goes into it. Like when you have to account for all the water weight fluctuations from all these different things, versus if you're a natural athlete, especially like a male natural bodybuilder, it's pretty easy, relatively speaking. You reduce food or increase steps or cardio, and that pretty much solves the weight loss equation up or down. Man, you throw in some other stuff, you're anyone's guess. Sometimes you're like, I don't know, the weight's up 5 pounds, but yeah, I'm doing more cardio and eating less. You're like, okay. So it really does make it harder, and yeah, not, man, I don't know how far down this rabbit hole we want to go, but then like, yeah, I've heard all sorts of stories. People are like pinning and all that, and like, dude, sometimes it can knock people out. Like they can't lift. It's wild. So this idea that it makes it easier, it's just like, I don't know if that's really true. And in fact, I would argue a lot of the other ways, but it is a really interesting and fascinating debate to have about it all.
Yeah, I think we could have a whole other conversation on that whole topic. I did want to actually touch on, because you mentioned it briefly. Um, After college, and then I assume before RP, you worked as a personal trainer. You and Mike, I think, did in New York, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
Uh, I'm curious, how did you find that experience working with clients in person? How did that influence inevitably, the founding and now just the development of RP?
Yeah, a couple things. It was a decent amount of fun because we were living in New York City. Basically, our life was fitness. We got up, we went to work, we trained people. We would go work out on our breaks. We would come back, train some more people. Eat, go home, hang out a little bit, like go to bed, rinse, repeat. So it was a lot of fun in that regard. You just got to do fitness pretty much 24/7, and you're in New York City. All sorts of fun stuff to do. Great times. So no real like huge downsides there. The place that we worked at was not really a place you would want to be at more than a few months or a year. They were kind of all about like you do the work for the client, so they're dependent on you, so they won't ever leave, and like that's just not a cool model. And they would make fun of us for like taking notes in our phone of like what our clients were actually doing so we could track it. It was just really bizarre and just not a place that we knew we wanted to be at long term. So Mike left after a year to go get his PhD. I went out on my own because I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. And these people are all, it's not like we loved fitness. I think the other people were just kind of there as like a job, but dude, for like fitness was everything to me. Like I loved everything about fitness. Um, I will say it was very good at developing some really cool connections. Meeting tons of just some of the smartest, best people in the world, people that work in finance, hedge funds, lawyers, doctors, all sorts of just the cream of the crop in New York City and Manhattan. And the other thing that I think is really valuable too is it allows you to develop a lot of good, just like interpersonal skills, talking to people. Because if you train people in person before, I assume, is that?
The last 11 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So
Yeah, I get it.
if you have like 10 clients in a day, the way you talk to every single one of them is completely different. Like some people, you might have to shoot the shit about sports. Another one might be about like world events. Another one might be like, I don't know, their kids or something like that. Like, man, you're sort of forced to develop this skill of talking to people, and I think that's definitely has a lot of value, like before you get into online coaching. And that's usually a question that comes up is like, well, like, how do you get started as an online coach? Probably start in person, develop all those
Yeah.
skills, get some reviews and testimonials and all that stuff. Then it makes it easier to go out and do that. So I mean, overall, I don't have too many bad things to say about my time as a personal trainer. I just sort of knew that it was really hard to do, especially in New York City. I didn't really have a name. I was young. No one really knew who we were. So we just had to go all over the city, uptown, downtown, crosstown, whatever. Like, man, it's really hard to do, 24/7, 365. It wears on you after a while.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with that completely. And to your other point, I mean, I have spent over a decade, training one-on-one 150 hours a month before now launching like an online coaching business. Uh, and I would say again, that experience is completely invaluable because the online coaching space, I don't want to say it's saturated because I don't believe that that's true, but there's a lot that's out there. And I think a lot of people get into this as they want to make a quick dime and they like fitness and they don't realize the work that goes into it. Um, I'm not terribly familiar with some of the back end business side of things, but I can outsource that. I have 100% confidence in my ability to coach and talk to somebody because I've done it since I was 20 years old.
Mhm.
Um, I will say though, it popped into my head. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. You talk about developing interpersonal skills and um, you know, learn to speak to people in different ways. Generally, I think a skill set you develop if you've done it for a long time.
Mhm.
This is the biggest putting my foot in my mouth story I've ever experienced. Luckily, this guy is still a client of mine. I've trained him for 5 years or so. He's a great guy. This is like maybe the second session I've had with him. He worked with a previous trainer. The trainer had gotten promoted through the company, so I took this guy over. Mid 50s, big sports guy, like played collegiate football, all this stuff. Um, so we're up here in Ottawa, Canada. So everyone in Ottawa hates the Toronto Maple Leafs, basically. It's like the ultimate rivalry. So we're talking about the Maple Leafs and all this stuff. I feel like I make a safe bet. There was a guy, I don't know how familiar you are with hockey, guy who used to play for the Leafs in the early 2000s called Ty Domi. I believe holds the NHL record for the most number of career fights. So I make a comment and I say, like, we're talking about how much we hate the Leafs. I'm like, yeah. And Ty Domi, like that guy was a huge piece of shit. And he looks me dead in the eye and goes, Ty Domi is my best friend. I go, no, he's not. He pulls his phone out and he's the second to last guy that he's called on the phone. And I just looked at him, was like, all right. I had nothing else to say. So, I mean,
But he played on the opposing team, right? He played on like the rival team.
yeah, so we're in Ottawa and then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
played on Toronto. So, I
Oh,
mean,
that's fair.
he
That's a fair
totally got it.
assumption to
Yeah,
make.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a fair assumption to make on your end.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So something I wanted to talk about too, and this is of particular interest for me as well, as I'm new in the space of now owning my own business. Firstly, I want to know, how has RP changed since its inception? That might be a very big question, but
Yeah, I mean, we've changed in a lot of ways. So, when we first started, it was just Mike and I, and Mike was basically tasked with creating the products and whatnot, and I was sort of tasked with doing all like the admin stuff. And I mean, I guess I had a sport management degree from Michigan, but like, come on, let's be honest, you don't necessarily learn all that much like real world practical stuff in college to actually go run a business. So a lot of it was just learning on the fly. And yeah, you just like make a shitload of mistakes as you go, and you kind of just try not to make the same ones. And like you said, when it comes to outsourcing, I think I was at least quick to realize that there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And I was very okay with asking other people that had done it before, like, what do I do here? Like, okay, I'm decent at these couple things. Going back to the interpersonal skills, I probably always had at least a decent understanding. This is actually something I say when it comes to business. There's a good amount of business that's just kind of like common sense. And what I mean by that is you don't treat people like shit. If someone is a client, you always reply to them, or, if someone has an issue with your stuff, you always do the best you can to resolve their issues. I used to take it personal when people ask for refunds. I'd always like kind of go back and forth with them a little bit. Like, I no longer do that. I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, we're not for you. We're not for everyone. And that's probably a big thing. It's maybe even been more recent, is me understanding not trying to be for everyone, because I used to sort of pride myself on being, oh, like I'm kind of like Switzerland, like I'm just neutral. And I was always like, that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing in business. And as I kind of learn more and more, it's like I'm not actually so sure that is a good thing, because if you're for everyone, then you're really for nobody. So we've kind of had this little bit of circle back to a bit more of the hardcore demographic, which is where we started. My true love, everything. So it's kind of cool to see it come a little bit more for full circle here, 10 plus years later, of like now we are working with like a bit more bodybuilders and people that take training seriously. Like that's the cool thing. So I'm having a lot of fun with like the Team Full Ram group. Those people are great. That group is phenomenal. Now with the RP hypertrophy app, like, yeah, like it's not for everyone. That's why we call it a hypertrophy app. If you don't know what hypertrophy is, you probably shouldn't be using the app. Like, it's for people that take training seriously. And guess what? It's a little bit more expensive than other like bullshit training apps, because we don't want general population folks in there that like just want something fancy that's going to give them some random shit workout. No, 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 no. This is a tool for serious people about serious training. And if you are serious about training, like you are, like I am, there's no doubt in my mind I would pay probably double what the RP app costs, because I use this thing every single day myself. I'm on a deload right now. I'm in contest prep. I start training again tomorrow. I've been looking at my phone at my training app multiple times a day, just like itching to get back to it. I'm like, God, I can't wait to train tomorrow. We want people like that. Those are the perfect customer for us, because they love this shit. And we do too.
Um, what would you say then? It's interesting because I imagine obviously there was something you ran into that made you realize you had to kind of circle back to that original kind of customer demographic. Were there any major obstacles that you've run into with RP where either, I mean, shit blew up in your face, or you went, ooh, like we need to U-turn here and like go in a completely different direction?
Yeah, two things. I think our diet app, RP Diet Coach app, is a good app. I do. I think it's a very solid app. But it kind of it's not necessarily clear like who it's absolutely best for, because it is best for people that want a plan and they want to execute a plan. It is absolutely not a tracker. And I think we weren't clear enough in that distinction, and it's sort of got a little bit muddied because everyone sort of compares it to MyFitnessPal, where we should have taken a stance from day one that we are anti MyFitnessPal. We are the
Mm.
exact opposite of MyFitnessPal. If you want a tracker, if you want to go eat whatever the hell you want and you just log it afterwards, don't ever touch our app. If you want to plan, you want to plan your stuff out because you actually want results, this is for you. It is a serious app for serious people. That's probably how we should have marketed it all along. And don't get me wrong, the app does pretty well, but that was a lesson learned for sure. And so we're trying to kind of circle back on that. That just goes back to like me diving in a lot into marketing and really understanding it more and like actually wanting to niche down because you have to have specific messaging for specific people. You really want to be successful. Yeah, if you have messaging that's kind of for everyone, well, you're kind of for no one. Number two was I remember my wife had just finished her last chemo treatment in 2020. This was in the middle of the quarantine. I had people calling me all sorts of names online because this was like in the really heat of 2020 and like all the social media kind of like outrage stuff. And we were just, we're a fitness company. So like we didn't really have much to add to everything that was going on in the world. And, no one really knew what was going on at the time. And I just remember I was like, yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. Like I'm tired of trying to take the Switzerland stand of like, I'm just like, no, I'm not. There's going to be some people that we're not for and some people that we piss off. I actually don't care anymore. Like, okay, then you're not for us then. Okay. Like, so those are a couple things that really stand out to me because like, yeah, man, I vividly remember having to defend myself, my own personal honor and RP because of some, you know, imbecile basically on social media. And I was just like, I'm not doing this again. I was actually trying to celebrate my wife being done with chemotherapy treatments in the summer of 2020 during the quarantine. We had all this shit going on. And like that's the stuff I had to deal with. Like I'm like, no, I'm done here. I'm not doing this anymore.
I think the social media conversation is a really interesting one. So the company that we just launched, it's myself and my girlfriend are running it. And for the time being, I'm sort of taking the lead on it. She did a lot of the back end stuff, which I would have done a horrible job with.
That's how it works, man. That's how it
You
actually
know,
needs to be. You need one person kind of front end, one person back end.
oh, and honestly, it's perfect because I enjoy the coaching, I enjoy the talking, like all of this stuff I really like. And I like, could I have built our website? Maybe it would have taken me forever and I would have hated it and it would have kind of sucked. I sent her, I was like, we should use this picture as the banner. She was like, cool. And then our website is super awesome. I think I did 1% of the job. We've got apparel, which has actually been doing really well, which is a really cool surprise. And same thing, I was like, hey, like these are the kind of shirts that I like to wear. And she was like, cool. All the shirts are on there, like people love them. So I hate doing that side of things. So it's amazing having somebody who likes that side because it's not what I'd want to do. But talking with the social media, um, since we launched officially, you know, I'm a fairly private person. I don't like putting my private life on social media, anything like that. I always found it a little silly. But I see the utility of it, especially in the fitness space, because that's where eyeballs are, right? So I've really taken this approach of trying to treat it like a job,
Yeah.
um, which in a short period of time, I already see like the dividends being paid. But the funny thing is the more you do that, you get, for lack of a better term, trolls. And we had this conversation last night because I don't give a shit. I have had one guy in particular, almost every post I've made, he has messaged or commented and he just like talks shit. And I don't care. I find it hilarious. I'm like, whatever. I'll make a self-deprecating joke to what he says to me. And then he's like he's got nothing to
Best
say.
way to go about it, right? Like I've got an 11-year-old son. I try to tell him, like, dude, if you ever get picked on, I'm like, no, 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 no. You take that on yourself. You make a joke about yourself too. Then no one else
Yeah.
can one up you.
Yeah. And so we had this conversation because she sort of felt, she's like, oh, should I be doing more? And so this happened. She's like, I think that really hurt my feelings. So I'm really glad that you're the one that's handling it. I'm like, yep, that's fair because I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all.
Dude, no, no, like you're spot on. So the reason that Dr. Mike and I have worked so well is because the things that he sucks at, I pretty much enjoy doing, or I don't mind them, and vice versa. For example, if Dr. Mike were in charge of RP's customer service, people would have waited weeks to get, replied back to or heard from. And like that, that would be terrible for business. People would, refunds, chargebacks, all that stuff. But like if it were up to me to design and write all of our products, well, like, no, like, it you got to play to people's strengths. And if you can find someone like that and you complement each other, like that's the perfect thing. That's usually why when companies are created, there's usually multiple people. It's not just one person. There's just one person, and you have to wear all hats. And like you're obviously going to have strengths and weaknesses. So if you can find someone that you kind of mesh pretty well with and you complement each other, that's like the best way to go. So that's why Mike and I have always worked so well together.
That was actually something I wanted to ask too. You hear, not mixing, friends and business and stuff like that. We're not going into business with friends. And that you see a little bit, I don't want to name any names, but you see, especially in the bodybuilding space, these companies bring their friends on, maybe as athletes or whatever. And then the athlete leaves a year later or 2 years later, and there's this animosity. So you see these examples of where it doesn't work out and often can be quite ugly. You and Mike have known each other a very long time. At least as from an outsider's perspective, it seems as though both your professional and personal relationship are seemingly quite strong. So I'm wondering if you could speak to maybe why that is, why you think you guys have been able to have success both as business partners and as friends.
Yeah, I think one is because we complement each other really well, and I guess it's just like this mutual understanding of like we could have totally just done our own separate things, and like we'd both be okay. Mike would probably still be a professor. I'd probably be a trainer, online coach. Like we'd both be okay. Like success wise. But it's the understanding of no, that wouldn't like we could do that. But what if we join forces and then like you do the stuff you're good at, I do the stuff that I'm good at, and you kind of elevate everything. It's that whole like, rising tide lifts all boats. And so we've just kind of always understood that of it's just a 50-50 thing. It's not, oh, you know, this person does more, this person does more. It's like, no, we just do different things. They're just different things, and you need it all to be successful. Someone has to write all the content and do all the videos and all that. And guess what? Like that, Mike excels at that shit. He loves that. Like he says he doesn't like it, but he loves being the guy that's on all the videos. Like that's his thing. Absolutely his thing. And
Yeah,
that's
he's
what
a performer.
he's a performer. He's an entertainer. He's a comedian. He's a phenomenal educator. I've sat in when he's taught classes before at university. It's phenomenal. It's one of some of the rare classes where kids actually want to show up. Kids actually want to learn because it's fun. It's relatable. It's not that boring monotone shit with the guys just standing up there, blah, 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 blah. No, like he makes it fun and all that. So he's got a gift. He's got a gift of the gab. Let him use that gift. And like I said, like he just would not excel at some of the things that I do. Like I'm more type A, like I'm gonna respond to people very, very quickly when they reach out and all that stuff for the most part. And I like doing some of that stuff. I love interacting with people on social media and customer service stuff and all that stuff. I generally like doing it. Mike, I don't think he even replies to DMs on Instagram or like none of that stuff. So it really just takes an understanding that two's better than one, and you just complement each other. And like the different skills are different skills. Not that necessarily one's better or worse than the other. It's just it takes more. Like one person just really can't do it. This is probably the bottom line. And I mean, the other thing too is, I met Mike in 2007, so I've known him for 16 years. In many ways, especially in fitness regards, he's always been like a mentor of mine. So like, I don't know, I guess we probably see eye to eye on, I don't know, like 95% of things out there in terms of, like just personal philosophies and all that. So we've just always gotten along really well. And, I don't know, chat numerous times a week and all that. And
The other thing I really wanted to talk about is I think this is certainly for me an exciting thing that you guys are putting on. The masterclass in September with Revive Stronger and RP. I know for myself, I honestly think the sale was up. I saw it on Steve's Instagram. The post might have gone up and been up for 5 minutes. So we have this 2 kilometer path behind our house, which
Nice.
is how we get our like steps in every. So we like have a morning and evening walk, and that's how we get our steps in. And it was dinking around on my phone, and I saw it, and I stopped, and I looked at her. And I showed my phone, looked at it, and was like, "Should I do this?" She's like, I think you'd be upset if you didn't do it." And so in the middle of the path, I signed up for it. I think I was the second person.
Oh, awesome, man.
Um, so I like, because I was just like, there's only 5 spots. I'm like, I'm gonna be pissed if I don't do this. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just signing up for it. So um anyway, all that to say, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a really cool experience. I don't know if you can give maybe some insight, I guess, either A, into what to expect, but I know the master class, the like 5 people portion was a change from the last time you guys did this, correct?
Yeah, I think so. So I've actually this will be my first time being a part of this seminar. So I
Okay.
know Mike and Jared, I think this is probably their third year doing it with Steve and Pascal. So I've actually never been to Europe before. I've never been to London before. So it's gonna be
Neither
my
have
first
I. This is
time.
a first for
Yeah, yeah.
me.
Dude, no, totally. Like, so I'm really looking forward to it. I told them last year after they went because they had such a great time. I was like, dude, I would love to go next year and help contribute in any way that I can. One just because I've never been over that way. And funny enough, I did like the 23 and Me, and like apparently like all my relatives are from London, like from the area. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, my mom is actually born in England, so
Nice.
and I've never been, so this will be a first.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, no, I mean, because it's only 5 people, it's really like, just imagine, being around Jared, Mike, Steve, Pascal, and even myself, like it's just essentially you name what you want to learn, what you want to get out of it, and you've got 5 people that give their insights and pretty much answer anything that you want. Along with it's like a cool workout. It's like working out with a bunch of just really smart people that know a lot of stuff, and you can just pick their brain about literally whatever you want. And man, like that's really cool. It's funny that you mentioned that because like I've had that happen to me. I walk in our neighborhood with my wife too, and I was debating whether or not I should sign up for this like marketing certification course and whatnot. And it's like a decent amount of money, and I was like, I don't know, like what do you think? Should I do it? And she was like, I said, you've been talking about this nonstop for like weeks now. Just shut up and do it. And I was like, okay, done. So yeah, no, man, sometimes when you sign up for something like that, it's like there's a lot of buy-in, and you're just like, okay, I really need to get a lot out of this. So like I'm gonna come prepared, I'm gonna come with notes, I'm gonna come with questions. Like here are the 3 or 5 main things I really want to get out of it. And I'm just gonna like make sure that I get that so I feel really good when I leave. Like that's how I approached like a course that I was taking. I was like, all right, I really need to make sure that I get these couple things out of this. So, it's like I think at least a 12-week thing. I was on every call. I did all my homework beforehand, all that stuff. So I just think it's like once you pay for something like that, it's like it's like fitness. I'm sure you've given free programs to people before. Like what's the hit rate on those? What's the success rate?
0.
Right? I was gonna
Yeah.
say zero, but I was like, I might be exaggerating. Like that, I mean, you want to talk about lessons. Dude, I've written so many diets for like top, quote unquote CrossFit athletes or whatever for free. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, I just gotta stupid. Like, oh, you want a diet? Great, pay me. Pay me. I'm gonna charge you double. Let's see
That
how serious you
honestly,
are.
that was some of the best advice that we got. And again, I was lucky enough that I already had years in the industry, so it wasn't a novel concept. But I had a good friend of mine, and he's more of like a powerlifting coach down in the States, and has done a very good job. And that was something he talked about a lot. He was like, charge more. He's like, and then when you're full, charge more. And it's not to be greedy. If anything, it does accomplishes one of two things. A coach or whatever kind of space you occupy, you have to make a living.
Mhm.
So you have to make, X amount of income, whatever that number happens to be. And if you charge very little, you have to work with a lot of people. And you only have so much time and attention. So the quality of your service for each individual is probably going to be quite poor. Like I'm sure you've heard this. How many people get an online coach, and then the coach basically disappears. They get check-in once a month. They get the same diet plan as somebody else. And the service is awful
Shit.
because they paid $75 a month for it.
Mhm.
Versus if you pay more, well, that coach might only have 30 clients. So he has tons, or she has tons and tons of time to work with each individual. And then I think alternatively, cost is a differentiating factor for how seriously people take something. So it weeds out people who give a shit. Like similarly, like because the master class in Canadian dollars, I think was $3,900. And like I haven't, paid for my flight or accommodation. So it's, a $6,000 weekend.
Yeah, the course that I'm talking about was like similar along those
Yeah.
lines.
So if someone's paying $6,000 for 2 days, they give a fuck.
Oh yeah.
So I think, from your perspective, then you get people who really care. And
Mhm.
it changes that experience, I think, entirely.
100%. I mean, yeah, you want to talk about other lessons. I think RP one-on-one coaching is criminally underpriced. And we have to change some stuff around and how it is presented and delivered and all that first, and then we will be changing and raising that. Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And it goes back to like marketing 101. Charge more because you don't want to have to deal with the riffraff. And dude, I remember back in the day, like 2014, 2015, I probably had like 100 clients.
Yeah.
Like I've had to play that game before. I still feel weird, even though I know we need to charge more. I just feel weird about charging more. And it's one of these things, and I've had this conversation with Mike a lot. We're experts in fitness, so we feel like charging more for something we already know is just really weird. But if I need to take my car to a mechanic or whatever, I need to go to a dentist, I need to go to a doctor, like it's gonna cost me a lot because these people are experts. And guess what? Even more if you go to a niche down expert and let's say, medicine. You go to an arm doctor versus a knee doctor. Like they charge more because they're experts in that. So it's like there's even more emphasis behind niching down and being very specific for specific people. So there's a lot to that. And again, it's just a lot of lessons learned over a lot of different, a lot of time, a lot of mistakes made.
The other thing I'm curious about too, how important do you think it is for coaches to lead from the front? So I'll use Jared as an example. He's continuously building a name as being a really good bodybuilding prep coach, and he's actively competing. I would make the argument, I think that adds a lot of credibility. And obviously he's learning through his own experience. You view that as a necessity? Do you view that maybe just as a positive? Like, how would you look at that?
I would say that you have to at least been in the trenches before. Probably a little bit more weight if you've done it to a pretty high level. I think that adds merit. Like, do I think that you need to be, in order to be one of the best coaches, do you also need to like still be competing? I mean, obviously, probably not, because like usually you can keep coaching when you're older. But I think it helps if you've competed at a high level. I think in something like bodybuilding, it is a necessity because if you've never been in the heats of the battle at like 2, 3 weeks out when just standing up is a tough task, man, I don't know. How do you relate to people like that? If you've been there before, you're like, hey, I feel you. I know it's tough to stand up right now, but you have to, and you're going to be able to give yourself a little pep talk. Like whatever little secrets or tips or tricks you used before, go do it. Because I've been there before too. Like that adds a lot to it. Um, what's interesting with Jared is because he coaches himself. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of that. I hire Jared. I'm like, Jared, I need your help. You're going to coach me. I would not coach myself. I could do an okay job, But I could do an okay job up to, like the last few weeks. I would have no clue how to water. No, just out of my wheelhouse. I don't know enough about it. I actually think he might benefit, maybe even the same with Mike, um, if they were to get their own coach.
It's an
This is my personal thought.
interesting conversation, I think. Uh, So I coached myself for my show. So I haven't spoken to either one of them about this, but I wonder if we would have a similar mindset where I think when you are really obsessive, very analytical, it's really hard to outsource those decisions to somebody else when you're like, I'm spending every minute of every day thinking about this and learning. And I'm not saying that that's the correct choice, but I like, because I can see it for myself. That's a hard decision to
Well, let me ask you this. Let me
make.
ask you, because I don't know the answer. I definitely operate in a little bit different mindset
Hmm.
of like, I like the simple, I like sort of, especially in the last part, like I just want someone to tell me what the plan is. I will execute it.
Mhm.
Make no mistake about it. What is hard is if I were to, the problem that I have is I can very easily justify things to myself.
Okay.
Oh, I'm looking pretty lean. No, I don't need to do more cardio, or I don't need to cut my food intake right now. Like, I think I'm good for another week. With a coach, it's just like, no, like you're doing this. And then you just do it. And it takes that line of thinking. I would personally, again, this is just me personally. Like if you can do it yourself and you did, right? Because you won, like awesome, hell yeah. That's just where I would struggle. I'd be like, I don't know, like, I'm probably good a couple more days. I don't need to do this. It's easier to take it easy on yourself. Whereas if a coach, they're gonna hopefully cut you the real deal. And like I value that. Jared, just tell me what to do, man. I'll go do it.
So actually, it's funny you say that because it that did click in my head a little bit. I can think of two things. So uh, I also coach my girlfriend. She's competing in 4 weeks. There's the Vancouver Open out on the West Coast and the Vancouver Pro Qualifier. By the way, prepping at the same time and coaching yourself and a person you're prepping is tough. I'm incredibly happy that I competed earlier and then had 6 weeks to handle her with like a fresh mind because it was getting challenging.
Say
But
no
I
more.
think, yeah, yeah. I think for myself, there's this dual, you're wearing two hats. There's the athlete part of the brain, which is you want to win, you want to do well, you want to execute, you want to succeed. But I think a lot of what I love about the fitness side of things, and I think this is the academic part of my brain, is I love the problem solving. So if I hired a coach, I would miss 50% of what I love about it because I like being able to see the problem, figure it out, and then have this proof of concept that I was like, this thing that I logicked out and it worked, or it didn't work, and now I can go back to the drawing board. So that part's very fun. Alternatively, we have this conversation. She goes, "Tell me what to do. I'll do it." She has a refeed. We have some parameters around it and all this stuff. She goes, "Well, what if I did this for breakfast?" I go, "No, like, nope, that's not what our game plan is. Our game plan is this, and we're going to follow it."
Mhm.
And even to her, she goes, "I'm happy that you could say no because I think I would have been like, yeah, I'm doing well. You know what? I'll have this for breakfast, even though it wasn't the plan."
100%. Dude, that's super interesting. I hear you on that, on like wanting to problem solve there. Yeah, it's a different mindset. I think Mike and Jared probably share yours very, very similarly. I much prefer a simplistic route, whereas they'll go probably round and round and round. And I'm just like, I hear you guys, but like, I don't know, man. Like, I got to get back to RP shit. Like, I got kids, I got a wife. Like, that's why I love the RP Hypertrophy app. That's why I love the RP Diet Coach app, because it's like, it's just right there. The
Hmm.
plan is there and I just execute it. Now, if I have questions, of course, I'll reach out and all that. Cause like I built my own mesocycle. I've built my own mesocycles in the app for this whole prep. Because I really just hired Jared for like the last couple, because I knew he was busy competing himself and didn't want to take too much of him. So he's been helping me more on some of the other sides of things. But so I sent him. I was like, hey, here's what I built. Here's what I wrote up. Like he had helped me prep in the fall, so I kind of had a pretty good idea. So I laid everything out. I'm like, here's what I'm thinking: 6 days a week. Here's the split. Like, let me know if you want me to change exercises. I think I only had a couple, kind of like intensity sets in there. Mile rep batches, giant set. And he was like, all right, cool. He replied back last night. He's like, all right, here's like the rep ranges. I want you to add in, some giant sets here and here. And on these, I want you to actually superset them. And I'm just like, cool. I'm like, that was it. Cause I got it, I could have done it my way, but I knew that there was probably some stuff that I was missing. So he came in and he just, fine tuned, tweaked it. And then, well, he's actually helped me quite a bit, because there's a very good chance I'm going to do an earlier show. And that was not even in consideration until a few weeks ago, when I was like, huh.
Yeah, I've seen some of the pictures that you've posted on your personal page. You look like you'd be ready early.
I feel like I'm getting leaner by the hour.
Yeah, that's such a cool stage to be at.
It is very interesting. And I feel like this prep's been a little bit easier because, doing cardio at night, my wife and I go on a walk every night together. And so like we could just chat more, and like we actually chat like a bunch of like just marketing stuff, because she's trying to do her own business and things like that. So she'll ask me questions, and I'm like, because I'm literally learning all this stuff in these courses on it, and she's taking courses. So it's just like it's a lot of fun, man. And like maybe you got someone to, like you said, right, you guys go and walk for
Yep.
it makes the time go by so much faster than I remember. I did it every night myself last prep. I would have to turn on the music and the motivational videos. Like I was pulling up anything I possibly could to get through. Whereas like now, I mean, listen, there's still a few weeks to go. I don't want to, march to the beat of my own drum too much here, because I might still get some of those miserable days coming. But yeah, it's just been a lot different and more fun.
Do you feel like you get into this groove after doing repeatedly doing shows? I feel like everything gets a little bit more finely tuned. And I also think probably, when you get really, really lean, you probably don't get greatest for, season. So you're already starting from a better place. I think coming out of prep, I imagine, based on my perception of your personality type, some of those good habits come through in prep. I'm sorry, from prep, they come through into your off season. So your off season's a little bit better. So you're starting from a better plate. So it just gets a little better every time, which also means you don't have to dig quite as hard. And then you don't have as much stress, which helps. So I feel like it just feeds into itself, right?
No, for sure. There's a lot there. You get really, really, really lean sometimes, and it takes a lot to kind of get to undo that. And if
Yeah.
you plan on competing again, obviously you're not going to do that. But yeah, like I mean, I remember, so how I made the decision last time to compete in bodybuilding in the fall, because I was just planning to do physique. And then I took some pictures at Mike's gym, and he's got literally the best lighting in the world. And I sent the pictures to Jared, and he was like, dude, what about bodybuilding? He's like, do you have striated glutes? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, I've been planning on physique, like I have no idea. And then I got home and I was like, oh, I actually do have striated glutes. And he's like, okay, you're doing bodybuilding then too. Whereas like now I'm like, I have glute striations like 6 weeks out. So that's gonna be
Pretty
interesting.
gnarly.
Yeah, right. I'm just like, okay, let's, because like at this point it's like you just get as lean as you can, and like that's
Yeah.
the name of the game. Like that's really all there is to it. So it's like, all right, well, whatever it takes, just time to get to a new level. I'm excited to see what that new level is, because it is fun, man. It's like this addicting feeling where like, oh, that's new. That looks interesting. Oh, that's cool. It's really neat. I know it, like to most people it would sound incredibly stupid, but like for people that are listening to this and like bodybuilding, they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, yeah, it is fun.
It's like the Costco guy. You're like, I get it. I see you.
100%, man. It is fun being around like-minded people that do the same thing, respect the same things that you do. That's why I said like the Team Full Rom group is just it's great because it's literally the first place I've ever seen in my life where I've like never seen any infighting or like name calling or bullshit or anything like that. It's just like respect.
It's amazing.
It is. I swear to God, I keep waiting for it. Like one time, maybe there was a guy that was like a little defensive or something like that. But that's like literally the only time I've ever seen it. And like, you know, anytime you get big groups together, that's just how it is. You know, stuff happens, but I just have not seen it. It's great. Like it's I enjoy being in the group. I enjoy answering questions and contributing. I've learned a ton. Um, Trevor Fulbright, who's a guy that helps in it, like he's taught me stuff, form and technique and all this stuff. Like it's great. I love it. It has enhanced my love and desire for bodybuilding. Even again, that's actually why I got back into bodybuilding. I saw, Mike, I saw Jared, I saw those guys competing, and I was like, man, I'm kind of like the odd man out now. I'm like, I gotta get back into this. And then I did like a little cut, like way back in 2021. And dude, it was like a 6-week cut. It was easy. I probably got down to like 8% body fat. And I was like, fuck, I wonder what I can do if I take it seriously, and do like a full, 10, 12 weeks. And then I did. And I was like, huh, I still maybe got something here. Well, now I got to try to compete once just to see what's there. And then like, I had never done good in bodybuilding. 2 other times I had competed. Got my ass kicked. But like now, this past time in the fall, like I was that old guy that was like big and had like a lot of muscle. You know how that is? Like I remember competing when I was like 20. And I looked at these guys and I'm like, how do they have so much muscle? I don't get it. Well, add on 15 years of training and there you go. Like now I was that guy and I was like, oh, finally. Oh. And I was like, it's fun to do well. And you're like, oh, this now makes it worth it. So it is. It's cool, man. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm, kind of old getting into the bodybuilding thing. I mean, I've trained forever. I competed in powerlifting for 6 or 7 years. And then this was my first show. And I'm 31 and I just did my first show. Well, a little on the older side getting started. But the thing that's been really cool in my experience so far, besides just finding this new competitive outlet where you're like, I'm like completely in love with training and this whole process again, and it's awesome. But like you said, you have these like-minded people. So I'll say this story because this is what it made me think of when you were saying just like wanting to be in with that team. Um, there's a guy who he sort of the last 4 weeks, while I was self-coached, he ended up sort of being someone to bounce ideas off of just towards the end. And I'd known the guy like 10 years, maybe even a little bit longer. He had like done my trainer orientation back when he was first starting. So we just kind of knew each other, but not terribly well. And, he's in his mid 40s. He's been in the game for like 30 years. And it was this really cool experience. And I felt incredibly flattered because he had been out of bodybuilding for years. Injuries, gotten older, all of that stuff, and just hadn't really been involved with the sport. He came down to the show. He was really involved with us, him and his wife. And he was so excited just being around it. But we've kind of had this talk of, I'm prepping for nationals for next year. And he's like, I think I'm going to start dieting down. And it's so I want him to do a master show or something, but this like itch for him has sort of come back because you start seeing these other people doing it, and it is very infectious.
Yeah. Just a quick story. I was training legs. This is my last hard leg workout. This would have been the sort of last accumulation week in my last mesocycle. And there were 2 guys from the Team Full Rom group in there. One's like my normal training partner. I train at home most of the time, but when I train legs, I go to a gym that's like a half hour away, just, because
Yeah.
you just need that sometimes. And it's fun. But dude, I was just like, I was telling him, man, we were cutting jokes like the whole time, and this was like, a hard workout. Like we're all getting our asses kicked, and we're just like joking around the whole time. But like, how it is. Like, you joke around between sets, but like when it's go time, it's go time. And I just remember saying to him, we'd film each other and all that stuff. But I looked at him, I'm like, guys, like I'm fucking having fun. Like it's fun.
Yeah.
And it had been, I don't want to say that it had been a long time since I thought training was fun, because of course, like you always kind of, you always have to, like, if you do this, you have to. But man, it was fun. It was really fun hanging around a couple other guys that were like, you know, they're not necessarily competing or anything like that, but like they're there, they work their asses off, great form, great technique, all that. They would definitely call me out on my bullshit if I was doing something wrong, like all that. And yeah, it was just fun, man. It was great. Like I'm at a point now where like I'm fairly low energy, but like I literally sitting here right now, I'm like, I cannot wait to train tomorrow morning.
I hear you. That's awesome. With that being said, because I think we're rolling up just over an hour here. Um, so I know obviously you have a show 6 weeks or maybe earlier.
We'll see.
So I just want to wrap up with, so what is kind of on the docket for yourself? What's on the docket for RP? And then lastly, if people want to reach out or they want to learn from you guys or they want to, see any of your products, where can they find you?
Yeah, so probably about 6 weeks out from Masters Nationals here in the US. Really excited for that. Probably going to do physique and bodybuilding, which is really cool. It's on back-to-back days, so that'll be interesting.
Sure.
Man, for RP right now, it's pretty much everything RP hypertrophy app. We had a really great launch. Did better than we thought even, and it's really cool. Again, lots of good feedback. We've already had numerous iterations, improvements, and stuff that have been out here in the last couple of weeks. And I mean, I will never train with anything else the rest of my life. It's just, I can program in what I want. It tells me what I need to do based on how I do. I can give it feedback. I love it. It's awesome. Um, I don't take my notebook anymore to the gym. I had like 10 years worth of probably training in a notebook written down. I don't need it anymore. I just have my phone. It's great. And then, yeah, just if anyone wants to connect personally, at nick.shaw.rp on Instagram. And people want to chat about diet training stuff, hit me up, let me know.
Well, honestly, thank you so much, especially considering your prep and how that feels. So thank you for being on here. I really appreciate your time. And I will see you in September in London.
No, I'm looking forward to it, man. I actually just bought my airfare 2 days ago. So it's
Yeah, I was looking at flights yesterday, so in the next day or two I'm buying mine.
Cool, man. Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun, man. I'm really looking forward to it. Just hanging out with a bunch of people, again, like-minded folks, getting in a bunch of training, a bunch of food, I'm sure, whatever good stuff London has, and it's gonna be great, man. I can't wait.
So thank you so much. Have a good rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing how the show goes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay, cheers.